Good evening, everyone, for the Tuesday, May 3rd Finance Committee meeting. I will begin with a roll call. I'll go in the order I see folks on my screen. Ms. Mulhern?
Here.
Mr. Fishbein?
Here.
Mr. Epps?
Present.
Mr. Cohen?
Present.
Mr. Burdell Williams?
Present.
Ms. Henry?
Present.
Ms. Haywood?
Present.
And Ms. Lohman?
Here.
I am here. I don't think I missed anybody. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Is there a motion?
So move, Charles Burdell Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, and on to the content portion of the agenda. Mr. Linderman or Ms. Kim, which of you will be presenting this evening?
That'll be me.
All right, I will hand it to you. I think the first item is the update of the 2021-2022 budget.
Yes. Okay. We have, your pictures always get in my way. All right, we have what looks like a rather lengthy agenda here. And we do have a kind of laundry list of legislative agenda items there at the end there too. We will go over we've kind of made it a combination of the 2021-2022 budget and the proposed final budget. So let's just jump right into it. This is a chart that's going to show you the current budget, our estimated actual, and the proposed budget. Some minor tweaks have been made. I'll go over them in a second, mainly in revenues. On the negative side, we received notice of the TIF for the Elkins estate, which I was unaware of. Actually should have been included in this year's budget and wasn't. So we had to actually refund them their property taxes, which was about just over 160,000. And then we'll have the same kind of credit. So we had to reduce that just a tad for next year. In that state sources, which I'll elaborate a little later, nothing has changed. The big change I'll talk about is the release yesterday of the property tax relief funds, which miracle on miracles comes with about a 17.6% increase to Cheltenham. You're going from 3.4 million to almost 4.1 million. And I'll talk about the impact of that when we get to that slide. Expenditures, this is the very high level. This is what we call super function. 1,000 being instruction, 2,000 being support services, 3,000 being student activities, and down the road there, with debt and things like that. So right now we're looking at about $127,600,000 budget, and I'll get into what makes that up when we get through there. This is what we again call the major function slide. So it's all the local sources are repped and all the state sources, all the federal. This gets down to a little more level, like I think you're used to. So salaries, you can see salaries. We have again only budgeted the increase for the contracts we know of right now, which is the BEC, and the benefits are up a little more. Actually, the estimate for this year is going to actually increase a little more. Lou and I got a notice today from Cross that our next self-funded payment is going to be pretty substantial, as we have a pretty substantial hit coming to the tune of about $300,000 or $400,000 additional dollars that wasn't in what we normally plan. They always notify us of any claims that are over 100,000. This one was pretty big. So That's not reflected in there. We just got that today. We'll work that into next month's estimates. The professional services, budget is down just a little bit. Professional purchase property services and the books and supplies, I tried to explain that last month. The accounting system has changed a little bit. So some of the utilities used to be in one and now are going into another. They used to account for them in 400. They're going to account for them in or 600. They're going to now account for them in 400. So that's why you're seeing a kind of flip flop around there. So the state likes to kind of throw us curveballs with the accounting system and change things, every now and then. When you get down to the bottom, other objects and other uses of funds, you'll note that most of the 800 and 900 category has to do directly with debt, but not all of it. In the 800 is also where a majority of your legal fees are for anything from solicitor services to special ed type fees. So really, the 10,600,000 of that is debt, combining those two, and the balance of that would be the other fees. Also included in there, I should tell you, are minor fees I consider. So if you have a club or an athletic team participating in an event that requires a registration, they are charged to that account too. But again, that's I call that's the money you find around the gas pump laying on the ground at Wawa. So here's some of the assumptions. Not a big change from last month. Again, as I said, other than the in expenditures. So you're in the midst of the CEA contract, and that's a big chunk of what would be in your salaries and benefits if that significantly changes. 2/3 of your budget is salaries and benefits. I mean, that's just the way it is. Some of the larger cost increases, again, we went to the what I'll call the 500 objects. Big chunk of that is charter schools. I'll talk about that in a second. Just about $1 million in benefits. And again, we get our benefit number from Blue Cross, and they give us what they refer to as an implied premium. You self-fund you pay for claims for your medical and prescription and dental and vision. So this is just a trending estimate as to what it's going to be. Now you do have a stop loss, so the most you can pay for any major claim is just under $400,000. But if you kind of rack up a couple of them, it does come to that. Contracted services, which is another part, it is the total, the 500s. Again, the charter schools are lumped into that, but other school tuitions have been going up too. The APSs, some of the IU classes that we're going to continue to keep, and other approved private schools, and tuition to other schools. And again, I talked about the utility changed from other contracted services, accounting for kind of a little discrepancy, I think was asked a month or two ago. This is just a pie chart that shows where all your money goes. And again, the biggest portion is this almost 67% in the blue, and it's red on my screen, or maybe a burnt orange. So when you start weaving out things like salary and benefits, like debt, like maintenance of the buildings, like transportation, you end up with a very, and tuition to other schools that you're required to do, like charter schools and like the approved private schools and the special ed schools that aren't students being educated by Montgomery County IU or by Cheltenham. You have what ends up being a very, very small amount of what I'll call discretionary funds. This is your state budget as it stands right now. should have put a number on here. I got it a little later for you on the property tax relief, so we'll talk about it. So we have received what we anticipated, and again, we budgeted this year for close to what we were going to get last year. So when you see what the projection for this year is, when you look at it, and the budget for next year, we're actually budgeting for what we're going to get this year. Not a lot of talk in Harrisburg about what's going on with the budget, although the word we get from our professional associations is, while they still may look at trying to propose a rather large budget, by the time that pie gets eaten, education will probably fall down to getting a rather simple increase. Although I did see some stats today from the Department of Revenue for April, and they had a pretty great April, regardless of what the economy was doing in collections. So not sure how that's going to fall out. This is your charter schools. Last month, I was able to tell you were down 9 students to 144. Unfortunately, this month, when we checked, you're up 8 students. You're at 152. So it seems to be kind of holding or fluctuating around that 145, 150 mark. So we've already paid them $2.5 million. We've got a couple months left. They are generally paid almost in advance. When we get a bill at the end of April, it's usually for the next month, for May. I'll clarify. Sorry for using acronyms all the time, but APS means is an approved private school. So that's a school that is approved by the state as a private school, where mainly special education students go. Well, primarily all special education students go there. So there's a number of them. Students are placed there. Sometimes they're placed there, and if they're placed, if they qualify, the state actually even gives us 40% toward their tuition in those schools. So we're keeping the budget at what we kept it for the charter schools for next year, and mainly that was kind of holding the line and at the number you have this year. So hopefully it doesn't go up any more than it already is. And it accounts for the increase in tuition rate that will be baked in there for next year. So these are the revenues, and what we projected. We're actually doing pretty good on the projection for revenues this year, and expenses. So we have about a $2.9 million difference. And next year, I'll add that the revenues that you see for the 22-23 budget do not include, that's like a zero tax increase. So the maximum tax increase you can do is 3.4%, which would get you a little over 3 million. It's actually probably closer to 3.1 million. So when you have any kind of tax increase, that will level up the budget, close to that. So right now, the budget as it stands now does not need the full 3.4%. It needs, in the 2.8% range. So then this is a history of the Act 1 index. You've seen this before. What you've had last year, the index was 3. You did 3. The one year where it sticks out, where you had 2.6, they have an adjusted index depending on your aid ratio, which is the second column after the fiscal years, and they calculate that you can qualify for actually an adjusted Act 1 index. So schools with a much higher aid ratio than yours would qualify for a higher index if needed. The state property tax, again, I talked about the decrease in the real estate tax revenue to account for the TIF. The TIF is it's a tax increment financing on the Elkins estate. Now, I wasn't around for whenever that was, and again, I just told you when I got the letter in the mail, I sent it to Ed, and I said, "I'm assuming this is legit. It looks legit." He said, "Yeah." And it wasn't in the budget for this year. It probably should have been, but that's okay. Again, it was about $170,000 hit to next year's budget. So that's one of the adjustments we made. We have not made any adjustments to retirements at this point. The board has to come down on any kind of adjustments that are going to be made for staffing. And I think that's in Dr. Scriven and Dr. Smith's hands. And again, the state property tax reduction allocation was given to us, and we had a little over 3.4 million last year, and we are at just under 4.1 million for this year. This is what the current tax increase would mean to the homes at a different level, the different levels that you have. And again, this is what I'll call the preliminary proposed budget. This is not your final budget. Again, those that were on the board last year, I call this budget your prom date. You know, you kind of like them, but you may not marry them. You know, you'll decide who you're going to spend a little more time with in June. And again, here's the difference in the homestead exclusion. Now, we do not have the homestead numbers of properties, so I had to kind of base my estimate on last year's numbers. So every year in December, the county sends out a letter to any residential property in your district that may or may not qualify for a homestead or farmstead. I don't believe you have any farmsteads. I can't believe you have any farmsteads, but anyway, homestead, you have to be the primary resident and you qualify for a small credit of your property taxes. So the property tax credit for this past year, 21-22, was $442. So if your bill was $1,000, you would get $1,000 would be your bill. There would be a subtraction of 442, so your net bill would be 558. And that was based on, I think those of you that were on the budget last year, I think I whined about how the gaming money, which is where your property tax reduction comes from at the state, had stayed relatively stagnant ever since they put it in place. I see you had a little increase from 13-14 to 14-15, but I just can't believe. I know they spend money on everything else. They allocate, and the schools, basically the original law was allocating slot machine revenue to school districts, or portion of the slot machine profits to school districts. So, but next year, our number came in, and based on the $4 million number, which is the allocation we're going to get for next year, and I used the number of about 7,800 properties. The property tax relief will be $520. So hypothetically, if you had a zero tax increase this year, and I'm not proposing that, I'm just saying hypothetically, if you had a zero tax increase, the taxpayers would see a $77.81 reduction in their tax bill because of this property tax reduction funding. So again, they send out the notice to all the properties. You have to verify that you actually live there. When the property transfers, so when you sell your house, it comes off the rolls and the new owner has to apply. So at some point, if you sell the house and you miss the application, maybe the first year you don't get the relief, which is probably why some of these numbers, but they are required to send out notices every year to people who are not on the homestead farmstead list and get them. So naturally, the more people on the list, the less that number will be. So that 520, don't hold me to that. That's an estimate based on 7,800. If they send out property tax notices or the homestead notices to people, and next year it's back to 8135 like it was in 13-14, and you have 520, you'll probably be just over 500 then, or maybe 510, something like that. It takes a lot to do that. So again, this is the preliminary proposed budget, which by law has to be adopted no less than 20 days prior or 30 days prior to the adoption of the final budget. So the final budget is scheduled for adoption June 14th. So on May 10th, you will need to approve this budget. And again, it's not the final budget. It can go up, it can go down, it can go sideways. I don't know. It does not, this doesn't mean you're committed to it. Lou and I will be required to after May 10th, put a copy of this budget on the website and put a copy of this budget out front at the reception desk for anyone to see. We will have to advertise in the paper. We have to advertise 20 days. That's my little confusion with the 30 days. We have to advertise within 20 days of the June 14th meeting. So sometime around May the 24th or 25th, there will be a legal ad in the paper that basically will show something similar to the budget resolution that you have in the packet tonight. We did open requisitions, I believe yesterday or maybe Friday. It said May, but it was we opened them up for the school so we can start getting orders in for next year. So that's happening. We will have we will come back on June the 7th with the what would be the final budget. And again, there's a lot of ifs on this budget because of the couple contracts that are outstanding right now. And we're just kind of doing the best we can with those and not without trying to overstock the budget, so to speak. Okay, so Dan, do you want to take budget questions or want me to just fly through?
Yeah, I think it might make sense to take questions on the two budget portions of the meeting first, because the second half is another set of meaty things. Thank you for all that information. Is there any board question or comment? I'll start with the board. Ms. Lohman.
Thank you. Thank you for the budget presentation, Mr. Linderman. I have some questions about slide 7. I have to admit I'm kind of confused about some of the information on there.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one. The charter school costs increasing by $425,000, and then the contracted services, which increased by $1.4 million, which also includes charter schools. Could you explain the difference between those two?
Well, charter schools are actually in there. I actually pulled that charter school out because it's been kind of a hot button for everybody in the state. I probably could have put that as a sub underneath the contracted services. They're in the same area.
Gotcha. Okay, didn't understand that part of it. The other question, are benefits increasing by 10%? I'm just sort of trying to figure out like how some of the things I've been learning by going to the MCIU board meetings fit with what sort of we're learning here at the budget presentation. And I understand we're part of the Southeastern PA Schools Trust, right, for our benefits. And while many of the sort of fellow 17 entities that are part of that trust, from what I understand from a presentation that we got at the IU last week, their benefits are actually going down a little bit. I'm wondering why ours are going up so much.
Well, last year we did not go up.
Okay.
And this year we are. The first look was actually, if you remember, I talked about it, it was closer to 23%. The medical was actually, I think 11%, and the prescription was well over 23 or 25%. It's really a matter of the health of the group, the age of the group, the school. The pure benefit of being in the trust is twofold. One, you save money on administrative costs, like Independence Blue Cross gives you better rates when you have more lives going to them. It does not save you any cost on the actual medical care, which is the biggest portion of it. You also save some cost on the purchase of the stop loss insurance. And I'm sorry if I blow my nose, my allergies are just like killing me today. Sorry. So it ends up becoming like a roller coaster. Again, I thought we were having a pretty good year in actual claims this year until we got the email today telling us that the next charge we get, be aware it's going to be like 300,000 or 400,000 higher than normal. So, hopefully that's a one-time. They've caught up to that claim cost. But again, it's a matter of the group. I do believe our group, is a little bit older group as far as you look at your number of staff members at the top step and things like that. As we people get older, we get more claims. And if you have a school that has that may have a younger average group, they probably will have less claims. It's really you're dealing with 500 or 600 people that on your group, and hopefully they're all healthy, and if they're not, they're not. I mean, I remember about 8 or 10 years ago, I had one claim at Great Valley that was $9 million for a neonatal infant, which was very bad. Poor thing lived for about a year, and then but so there was, fortunately we had stop loss, and then our costs were capped at $300 and whatever thousand our thing was. But you only need a few of those to go over the stop loss. And then not only do you pay the stop loss pays, but then when you get your premium for stop loss the next year, it's going up. It's like your car insurance. And stop loss premiums typically run in the $400,000 to $500,000 range anyway for the year. So yeah, it's really, we have to take a deeper dive into things like that. We don't have the that I'm aware of. We don't have the thing. We had a tool where I came from that dove a little deeper into some things. I can tell you on the medical on the RX side of things that our numbers are increasing rather severely because of specialty drugs and injectables. Some of these could cost you, a couple $1,000s a month. It's not like taking Lipitor or the generic where it's $3 a month. So I don't know.
That's helpful. No, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. That's all I had on that slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lohman. Are there any other board questions? All right, I have a couple. And the first is around the Autism Support Program that I know is undergoing a change. And is that reflected in this budget yet, in terms of decreasing the MCIU budget, but also increasing our salaries and benefits according to the anticipated hires?
The straight answer to that is no. We're hoping it doesn't cost more than what we're paying at MCIU. We believe it won't cost more than what it is at the MCIU, but we've kept those numbers the same because they seem to fluctuate as to what we're going to need and what kind of support we need to have in here. I believe in the long run it will be, and it's one of those budget areas that you're going to just have to wait for a couple of years. Again, I said this for 35 years. I wish I could budget special ed correctly. I don't think anybody can. You're like chasing the tail of the dog. You think you got it and runs away a little bit, and you're every time I thought I had extra money budgeted, at Great Valley, 3 kids would move in that were going to the Overbrook School for the Blind, which are a couple $100,000 each. So.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess before it's final, will it be? And I also appreciate that it's my understanding is it's roughly anticipated to be comparable, or not a wash, but in the same ballpark. But should those numbers be in the correct buckets, so that way next year when we are tracking our dollars, we are tracking against budgets that we anticipate to be. So in
We
other words,
should-
salaries
should-
and benefits reflecting these increased positions next year when we're tracking.
We should, and once we start officially transitioning some of those teachers to Cheltenham classes, then we can do that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and just this is for clarity, not pressuring in any direction, the anticipated budget at next in June, the final but like the true final budget will likely not reflect that structural change yet, because that structural, even though we did vote to make that change, and because the positions have not been hired.
Right, and some of the positions through transfer of entity, you will be acquiring from the IU. So
Okay.
when those kind of things start coming and the board has to approve those kind of things, then we can make the appropriate changes, or when we see them on the agenda. I don't need
Okay.
it approved by the budget. I need to see it coming on the agenda for us to make an intelligent change, like, okay, we're going to change this teacher, this amount of dollars that's now coming over to salary and benefits. These aides are coming over, so.
Okay, thank you. Next question is around, there's a line, utilities changed from other contracted services to supplies. And I just wanted to clarify, is that that is a change of an accounting number, correct? It's not an increase.
Correct.
Okay.
They were in one object and now they're in another, because the state decided it was really a supply and it wasn't whatever they had it in before. And so it's.
Understood. Okay, thank you. And then I'm curious around, I know that we have ESSER funds. This past year has been a very strange budget year. We've got a bunch of one-time grants that came in, which I believe are going to translate to some one-time expenditures as part of utilizing those grants. Does next year's budget expenditures incorporate ESSER spending or other one-time expenditures?
We do have in the federal revenue, we do have about $1 million budgeted to draw down on the ESSER money.
Okay, that answers my next question. So so the reason that federal number revenue is increased is because it represents the utilization of one-time ESSER funds.
Yes.
The revenue from federal will not continue to exist at the 1.4
No.
million
No,
or whatever.
it'll drop back to your big federal revenue will be Title I, which will be,
Okay.
or whatever that number is.
Sure.
Back to that screen.
And so then likewise, there is, I imagine, an analogous expenditure that's tied to that revenue, which is a one-time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the decision at next year's budget will be, now we'll probably have some ESSER money still left, because you can spend it all the way through the ESSER 3 or the ARP money. You can spend all the way through 2024. So for the next year's budget, 23-24, you probably will still have it in there again to continue programs or whatever you're buying. But at the point where you take it out of federal, you're going to have to make a decision. Are we going to continue funding this as a board, or do we pull it out and thank the feds for doing this for a couple of years?
And I imagine that it will be helpful when we're talking about the final budget to have and we can discuss this during a pre-meeting, but to have some of those one-time revenues and expenditures explicitly laid, I understand what you're saying, that the expenditure we might decide to continue, even though the ESSER funds are utilized. But the point is, funds that are expenditures that represent new initiatives tied with one-time revenues, it would be useful, at least for me, to have those laid out so we can understand, which of these things are potentially transient and which are true increases. I have some other questions which I'm happy to ask offline. The process question I have is around, just to underscore that the vote in 1 week truly is, it's not pure procedural. It does represent, an announcement to the public, hey, this is something to look at and start to comment on. but it is not the approval or a lock-in of any numbers, and we do still have another month and a week to refine these numbers, both on the revenues and expenditures.
That is correct, and you're sending a semi message by not having it. The budget will not reflect the full Act 1 index.
Right, which I think is a a message that will be welcomed rather than draw frustration. So thank you. That is all of my questions. I will go. I see there are some members of the public here. Are there any questions from the public? And for those, and I do see Mr. Burdell Williams, I will recognize you in 1 minute, but for the public, if you do have a question, simply raise your hand and you will be acknowledged and able to speak. Or if you're unable to via, you don't have a microphone, you can enter your question in the Q&A section of Zoom. Just please be sure to specify where the region of the district in which you live. Mr. Burdell Williams.
Yep, just one clarifying question for thanks Chuck for explaining this a bit, but just a clarifying question around the TIF, right? Where will we expect that to appear in the budget, like going forward? Will it be a standalone line item, or will it be, where will it actually live so that we, have knowledge of the fact that it is present as a part of the future budgets?
It lives in the revenue, the tax revenue. Okay. So it's a reduction in your tax revenue. Okay. So your real estate tax, we can certainly try and pull it out so that you can see it. Eventually, the tax increment financing, and I started to, I kind of continue to think faster than I talk. So I started to explain the TIF is really you're giving a builder a break there by not charging them, all or some of their property taxes. Intent is for them to use that to pay for capital type costs. And it's normally over a certain number of years. I've seen them go as high as, 10 years, 20 years, depending. And then at the end of that, they would, the thing is you would get a big increase then that year. You would have, because you're going to, whatever your tax increases are, they're not going to see them. They're going to be fixed at whatever the minimum number was established. Or if it was zero, it was zero. If it was a number, it was a number. But the increases won't. So when the TIF is done, when it's kind of like borrowing money. They're borrowing money from the school district, but in the way of taxes to help build, with the intent that at the end of the borrowing series, there would then be a big tax revenue producing property kind of right down the road there at the Elkins estate. So hopefully that's what happens. There are some penalties in there if they don't finish it. I'm not sure how that one works out. I wasn't involved with that. I was involved with one TIF, which our board did not approve for a hunk of property off of 202 down here. But in places where it's hard to get something developed, it's a good thing to use. It's kind of like the LERTA thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, as one board member who was actually around for the TIF, I won't say that I forgot about it, but it was definitely packaged away behind all of the other budgetary, items that we discussed. And so maybe this time of year, maybe just it's worth mentioning just at least once, like we are right now during the preliminary approval process, just so we know that, right, like, we'll be talking about our percentage of collected revenue and, evaluating that revenue. And I think it'll be important to note that, 170, or I know the number is, I think, consistent over the life of the TIF, right? It
will go up slightly every year. So, when you have a tax increase, the TIF goes up too. So that it's going to fix at whatever rate they were fixed at when it was enacted. So if they were paying 100,000 in taxes and you said all future tax increases will not get, and they won't be subject to future tax increases. Or if you're paying 100,000 and you said the TIF was going to be for 50,000, would be 50,000 plus the tax increases. I believe that's the way the one that I was familiar with that we did or we didn't do that was being proposed out my way.
Yeah, I will have to review it. It was my recollection is that the number was consistent over the number.
It could be. I can pull out the letter did not kind of give me a history of the TIF.
I see Mr. Cohen has his hand raised as the.
Yeah, the letter they sent saying we need our money back didn't give me the details of it. So, and I haven't had a chance to research it.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Ms. Henry, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so I just wanted for the newer members to one, put out that we can talk about, because members of this board were on the TIF committee when it was going through and would have greater context for you all, because I don't want you all to, like, what is this TIF and what does it mean and what happened? So, and Dave, Mr. Cohen may be speaking to that also tonight, but there is more information that certainly will be provided to you all in terms of, how the TIF came about, what it entails, and what it means to the district now, but also long-term.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, I can talk about the TIF, and I'll be brief. So the TIF is just for the Elkins estate. A little bit of background and context was that the property was vacant and the developer came to the township, and developer said effectively to have this development go through and to maintain the historic buildings and to build a multi-use property, including a hotel and a distillery and a spa and other uses on the property. Now Farmer John is there as well, that they needed a break, they needed a TIF. And Mr. Lindeman did a good job explaining how TIF works. We'll go over that again. At a high level, the TIF is structured for 20 years. In years 1 through 3, 100% of the tax revenue goes back to the property owner for all intents and purposes. It's more complicated, but that's the way effectively it works. I think we're in year 2 of the TIF now. In years 4 through 10, $100,000 will be received by all taxing bodies, by the township, school district, and also the county. And obviously the school district represents about 80% or 78%, it varies a little bit, of the $100,000. So starting in year 4, we should get about $80,000 from years 4 through 10 per year based on the TIF structure. In years 11 through 20, it's more complicated, and I won't go into the details. It depends about how much taxes are paid by the property in a range of ways, but we can see meaningful money in years 11 through 12, and I'm sorry, 11 through 20. And then after year 20, the TIF expires, and then the school district will be made whole. Another brief bit of background, the context is that the property had been nonprofit for decades and decades. It had been owned by Order of Nuns, and that made the TIF more manageable in many ways. My feeling was, and other people I think concurred, in that we were not losing tax revenue from day one, in that the property had been paying no real estate taxes for decades and decades. So we were not taking the property off the tax rolls. We, for all intents and purposes, were keeping the property off the tax rolls in years 1 through 3, and then incrementally for years 4 through 20. So that's my TIF explanation. Happy to talk to people for hours about this if they want to hear more about the TIF, but that's my brief explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen, and an excellent explanation it was. I see no other hands from either the board or the public, so Mr. Linderman, I think we can move to the next part of the agenda.
I'll just add that based on Mr. Cohen's description with everything that's being built there, you're going to get one heck of a big tax bill when it comes fully into play. So I know it's a ways off, and I'll be probably in the assisted living nursing home by then, but I'll read about it in the newspaper. Well, there won't even be a newspaper by then. But,
one of the other items is once it's up and functioning, at the district will have some access to the facilities for different programming and things.
so.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Lindeman, I think the next agenda item, and I'm saying this not for you, but for the public, is the, oh boy, food service contract. That is the next item.
Yep, it's right here. So we, at the board's request, we went out and we did the RFPs for food service. We had a review of we received the RFPs on April the 1st. committee comprised of two, a building administrator, a central office administrator. Mr. Fishbein was on the committee, and Lou and I sat on the committee. And our consultant actually kind of guided us through this. It's a kind of a complex thing. Based on that, we were down to two finalists: the current contractor Chartwells and the a potential new contractor Whitson. And it was recommended by actually the principal that was on the committee that we do a taste testing, and they did that on April 28th. And our goal was to come back today with some kind of recommendation and have the board approve it on May the 10th. The new contract would actually start July 1st. So I'm just going to go at a really high level. You know, the two finalists, Whitson and Chartwells, both had great proposals. Food costs were a little higher in Chartwells than in the Whitson proposal. We had some questions on the guarantee in the Chartwell's proposal, but you know, so we looked at that, and there were some questions on sustainability and the actual ability to do sustainability and the sustainability prior, you know, over the past few years. You know, essentially, and you know, I don't want to get into any too many details of it, but essentially the committee came down on recommending that Whitson be brought to the board for recommendation for contract beginning July 1st. I will let Dr. Scriven or or Mr. Fishbein comment if they would like.
Mr.
Are you
Fishbein.
on, Mr. Fishbein?
Oh, Mr. Fishbein, you are on mute.
No, I'm not. I was excited by the proposal that ended up getting adopted. First, I found it a little distasteful that Chartwells was giving us a little bit of a harder time on what was guaranteed, given the lengthy history that we have with them, 31 years. But Chartwell had not been as responsive as this board would have liked to our sustainability concerns, and their proposal really didn't address that issue, even though it was part of the RFP. And it was a 458-page proposal that I word searched sustainability, and the only things that it had in it about that were sustainable food sources, which were important, but it was as if we hadn't said anything to them about the other part of sustainability, which is the styrofoam that they are still using. And in contrast, Whitson was completely all over that in their proposal, and they didn't have the history of us asking, and they just put it in there because it's part of their ethos. And I also thought that the way that they presented their food choices will make marketing the idea of eating in the cafeteria a thing, because they talk about their pizza station and their rotisserie station, and the way it felt like more like a food court than it did like a cafeteria line that we're used to. So for all of those reasons, that was my strong feeling, and I was happy to hear that the committee landed on that. Dr. Scriven, anything to add?
No, sir. You guys went through the full process. I was just there for the taste testing, so I wanted to defer to you guys that were on the committee to actually have comments. So thank you for that, Mr. Fishbein, and others on the team.
And in a response to, I believe Mr. Epps asked, we can provide the board with a copy of the actual RFP that Whitson provided. We have that electronically, so if you want to kind of read through and see what Mr. Fishbein and the rest of the committee went through.
That would, oh, sorry.
Yes, please, Mr. Epps, I was going to just acknowledge you in case you wanted to respond. But you're now remuted. Please, Mr. Epps, go on. Yeah, you are now muted, by the way.
Thank you. That would be, and I put it in the chat, certainly encouraged to see, and I'll say it for the record, encouraged to see there's a minority business enterprise as a finalist, certainly something we've talked about. And you all have, the administrators have worked on since before I was here on the board, but certainly something we've talked about since I've joined. And yeah, that information would be helpful, I'm sure, for others as well.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. And yes, +1, I also enjoy long documents here and there, nighttime reading. So thank you, Mr. Fishbein. I think your hand is up, but I imagine you don't have further comment. Is that correct? Thank you very much. I think we can move to the audit contract.
This one was a little. If you recall, we did have some issues with our last auditor, which we worked out about a year ago, or well, not a year ago, about 8 or 9 months ago. Your current auditor is Maley, and we sent out requests for RFPs. We received them on April 25th. We only had 2 respond. I will tell you, they are 2 credible, both very good firms. Maley was not one. I mean, I think they're still stinging from the 1920 audit. They claim that they spent a lot of money in the audit, even though we paid them a lot of money for this last year's audit, the 2021 audit. But Lou and I did interviews with the 2 firms. One was BBD, and the other was Barbicane Thornton. And again, we can share these proposals with you too, if you would like. Another, not quite as long as the food service proposals. Those are really lengthy. So you're right. You'll need probably a really large bottle of wine if you're going to read them. But the auditor proposal. So we are recommending BBD because, quite frankly, they both were about the same. BBD was $33,000 a year fixed for 5 years, where Barbicane Thornton started out at $34,500 and worked their way up to a little over $36,000. BBD has great references. I actually know most all the business managers on there, so we are recommending them, and we'll recommend them. Need to get this on the agenda for May 10th too, because don't want a repeat of the 1920 year. Lou and I want them to come out for the preliminary field work in June, and technically the contract starts in July, but they will come for preliminary field work in June to kind of get the lay of the land. They need to get the work papers from Maley so that they can review those. In addition, they've reviewed the audits for the past couple of years, and our audits have been clean audits. So that's the audit, probably more than you wanted to hear about auditing.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman. Is there any board comment on the audit RFP? And I believe I failed to go to the public for either RFP, so I will open comments to the public as well. While folks run to their raised hand, but oh, Ms. Haywood, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Linderman. Just a very quick question. For BBD LLP at the fixed price of $33,000 a year, that's not a lot of money, but how does that compare to the auditor or the audit firm that we've used in the past?
So in 1920, our fees were about $35,000. I'd have to confirm that. For 2021, because they were going to drop us after 1920, because they said they spent too many.
Hey, Mr. Linderman, stop. Yeah. I'm taking this back to 1920. I feel ancient. You mean 2020, right?
No, 1920.
Or the 1920 school year.
1920 school year was
All right, thank you. I'm just confirming. That's all.
that was
Calling
that
me.
was the audit. It wasn't, when I came in January of 2021, it wasn't completed yet, and we had big change in staff. It was kind of confusing, and the problem was it was the end of January when I came here, and by then the auditors kind of convert from doing school audits to doing what everyone loves, and that's IRS tax returns. So it was hard to pull them in and get them out. It took us till, as you recall, you got the 2020 audit like last summer, which was a whole year later. 2021 was much better because, basically because we had Lou. But I guess from what I'm saying is Maley charged us $50,000 for the 2021 audit. That was just, and we had to do it because when I got back here in October or end of September, early October, and I said, where are we with the audit? And they hadn't started. I called them and said, well, we're not doing your audit this year. So you can't not do our audit. And if you recall, I came to the board and we had fished around for somebody to take it over really quick. And actually the one firm that was going to not volunteer, they would have charged us to come in, was BBD. So they were interested in coming in here anyway. They do, many schools around here. There's a couple, local schools. They're doing Perkiomen Valley, and I know Jim Weaver, the business manager there, pretty well. They do Radnor. They do Council Rock. They're doing Springfield, Delaware County, Unionville. They do Wallingford. So I had a little experience with them because as I was leaving Wallingford to come back to here, we were working with them in their field work. So that was it.
Chuck, did we have a cost for the 1920 school year as well? Did you already say that?
Well, this contract, technically they will be audited 20.
If I may, I think that just to make sure we are fully responsive to Ms. Haywood's question, Ms. Haywood, you are specifically looking to understand how this proposed cost compares with just flat out compares with how much it costs to run an audit in the past. So it sounds like we had a 35,000 last year, a 50,000 the year prior.
No, it's a 35,000 the year prior.
Okay.
50,000 this year,
Thank you.
which is for 2021. 35,000, and let me confirm that 35,000. I am throwing that number out there, but I will confirm what that number was. It was more in line with what our numbers are for now. But to get them, the board's request, we wanted to stay with the same auditor when we, back in October when I brought this to you. So
we're current though in terms of audits.
We are absolutely current, and we are looking forward to being more than current by getting them started in June.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I had a comment I should have raised when we were talking about the food service contract, though I guess it could apply to the audit as well, which is it seems like a very exciting thing to change a food service provider. And in particular, if there is a great story to tell around sustainability, which is absolutely a high priority for our student population, as well as our broader community. I just wanted to flag that there might be some very positive communications that we could make around that change once it's approved, for the consideration of you, Dr. Scriven, to carry forward.
Yep, we'll do.
And of course, the auditor, I'm sure many people will be very interested to know that we've changed auditors as well.
Well, and I will tell you, typically, it's okay to keep an auditor for a while, but it's good to refresh. I mean,
yes, I do it, but in seriousness, I am very thankful that we are keeping it fresh for the reason you are.
I was probably through about 5 different auditors at Great Valley in my was there. Some I really liked, and then some I really didn't. So, but I actually did not have BBD in Great Valley. They're around. I will tell you one thing, which I wasn't around last week. I was away. I won't tell you where I was, Aruba, but I was away. They did the taste testing. I don't care who got it. The kids were just excited about the taste testing. Lou was sending me pictures. Now I was, on the beach looking at my pictures on the text, and it's good. I believe that it was a good thing. I know it just was a good thing to do, regardless of who got it. It was just kind of to involve the kids in that. I failed to mention that we did have the kids do evaluations of the taste test, and Whitson came out a little bit newer. I would kind of give them a little bit better, but again, it's kind of the new restaurant theory. When the new restaurant opens, everybody's going to go. So we'll hopefully that everything that's in there will be good in the proposal, and it'll be up to the board and whoever sits in the seat I'm occupying to make sure they hold their feet to the fire for this new contract.
Thank you. The next agenda item is the transportation contract discussion.
Okay, you see how I have a blank slate here? So I don't know who wants to take this over. Does Dr. Scriven, you want to do this? I mean, I could give you a little bit.
No, I'll take this over. We're not there yet. When I say that we are looking at continuing with our current transportation contractor, Mr. Diazio is working on drafting the extension of what that agreement would look like. Once he has finalized that agreement, we don't have to worry about having this ready to vote on by May. This probably will not be ready until June, but we just wanted to give you an update on where we are. Derek Platt has been a part of the dialogue with Chuck, Lou, myself, and Mr. Diazio, and we feel that this is the best direction to go. But the numbers will be shared with you once our solicitor has that drafted. So that's where we are at this current point with transportation. So this is not a must for next week. This can be bumped to June.
Thank you, Dr. Scriven. Any comments or questions on that update? I imagine probably not yet. So the next item on the agenda is the enrollment and demographic study.
Okay, I'm not going to read this, but this kind of gives you a little background of it. And I do believe we put an attachment in there with their actual proposal for the Pennsylvania Economy League. I've used this firm out of Harrisburg many times. They will come in, they'll review your population trends, birth data, all that stuff, housing. They will actually go and meet with the township people and get all the stuff that we kind of do at the liaison meeting, but they'll get it kind of lined up in a way that a school would understand. They're going to give you 5 and 10 year projections. Now I will tell you that 5-year projections will be pretty good. 10-year projections will be okay, because once you get to 10-year projections, a lot of those kids aren't even born yet. So it really depends on stuff. 5-year projections, they are pretty good on. They will meet with them. The timetable would be once we get started, and this would be something that you would initiate this now. They would not really, they'd start on a lot of the background information they need, but they would not work on the enrollment projection until your October 1st enrollments of next year are in, because you want the most recent ones you can get. And we're already so close to, and I hate to say, we're already so close to October. It seems like it's like only 5 months away, October 1st. That's the numbers they'll use. We will supply them with all the historical data from the school district and they will come do a big report to you probably at a finance meeting, in November or December if you want. I would probably want you to do that if you can. And And then it's critical to look at the numbers. They will break it down by school to look at the numbers. It will give you a real good feeling of whether you need to realign elementary boundaries, whether you need all those schools or not. And I can say that because I'm not here very long. So, but you know, whatever you need. So, and it'll give us some numbers to some data to be able to really put forth for you to put forth together that long range capital plan that you really, you know, got to get going on.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman. I see Mr. Cohen's hand is raised, and any other board members with questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Mr. Cohen.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Linderman. You did answer one of my questions, which I do not believe is in the proposal, but it's good to hear, and I trust it would happen, which is getting data by school building. One of my hopes is that at some point we look at redistricting, especially in part because of Ashburn Meadows, former country club, which is in the catchment area for Myers and Cheltenham Elementary Schools across the street. So I'm glad to hear that, and assume that will be part of the proposal or the work, even though it's not. I did not see it. Maybe I missed it in their proposal. I did just want to raise and throw out the idea, or in case you're not aware, for consideration, or at least for background, that the County Planning Commission does similar studies for Montgomery County, and they're partially subsidized by the county. I did some investigation during the meeting, and the cost would be roughly, probably a little bit less than half of the cost of going with the Economy League. It's about $10,000, looking at some recent work they've done or they approved for Upper Moreland and Hatboro Horsham. And I think it's based in part based on the population size of the school district. And the cost for those were about $9,000 and $8,000. And the county, in terms of disclosure, I used to be on the County Plan Commission board for a number of years, and they obviously know the county very well. So no disrespect to the Economy League, who I've worked with before as well. But another option, if we want to consider it, or you want to consider it, would be looking at the county that could do it for about half the price. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Certainly could call them and get a proposal. I mean,
okay, great. What I'll do is I'll send you a link. I'll send you the contact information of the person to talk to.
Yeah, I did not have the ability in Chester County. They didn't have that kind of service from our county for us. So that's why we always this and so.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Please forward that to us.
Yeah, so we can actually pull this from the agenda then. It's not urgent because again, it's something that you probably want to approve in June, whoever you go with, so they can do some background work over the summer, with the township and things, and then be ready to just drop real numbers in on October 1st when your enrollments are set.
Thank you. That makes sense. Mr. Fishbon.
Yes. I want to tell Dr. Scriven that there should be something on a shelf somewhere in his office, because we did this about 3 years ago. And certainly the benefit of that should be, whoever does it, Economy League or county, will have some information that they won't have to develop anew from what we already paid for. And it may give them insights that they wouldn't, that will help them do their planning, they're predicting. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And we could probably dig something up in emails that we were sent, because we were considering a redistricting, this may be 4 years ago, but it's not that long ago. And some of the data may still be good.
I'll have our team research the contracts dating back, and we'll see what we can find. But thank you for that insight.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Fishbein. Ms. Henry.
Just real quick, Joel, I was going to say, if you're looking for an email, hopefully you saved it to your own email, because I believe Cheltenham email deletes things after like 30 days or something. It doesn't keep it long. I can tell you that. I've looked for things from past years.
Thank you.
All right. The next, I think I see no other hands and I don't see members of the public raising hands either. So I believe the next item is discussion of the action items. And I assume that we just discussed striking the demographic study from this month just to do further research.
Will do.
All right, Mr. Linderman, I don't know if you want to, if this is an agenda item or simply for information.
This is information, but you actually have the agenda items there. And
Oh, thank you. Yep.
On the agenda build. So this is the budget recommendation. We will fill in the name here for the food service contractor. We will fill in the name for the audit, for this week, and we will strike this one. And this is just a routine. We've used this company before. You had it approved last year. This time it's the student accident insurance. The big number there is basically deals with your athletic teams and band and things like that. And then there's voluntary coverage for students who may not have parents that may not have adequate medical insurance. It's relatively inexpensive coverage. You can either get the school time or the 24-hour coverage, and it's what they call $100 excess. So it covers things that maybe your own insurance policy doesn't cover if you don't have great insurance, or if you have no insurance at all. So, and that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman. I see, Mr. Fishbein, your hand is up, but I think it's not. I think that's a lie, or an illusion, I should say. Thank you, Ms. Haywood. I do see your hand up, though.
Mine's not a hologram.
Yes.
But the prior slide for the action items, could we also get the cost related to the audit contractor and the food service contractor added as part of the approval language?
I can do it for the audit. The food service one's a pretty complex one. It's not like a set fee. It's based on a lot of things, and with the guarantees, it could be less. So I'll see what I can put in there for you. But it's not as cut and dry as the audit, where it's, you're going to pay $33,000, period.
Okay. If there's a range, an annual range that we could at least.
Yeah,
have
we can look, and Lou and I can talk to our consultant and see what she recommends putting on there if you want to see some numbers.
Yeah, I think for for information for the board, but also transparency to the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. I think, somebody, no, all right. I think we are all set then, and just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Zachary Epps.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. Is there a second?
Joel Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Fishbein. So it is done. I won't make you all vote.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you for a
Good
great
evening.
meeting.
Thank you, administration.